Hey folks, Kevin here. Well, it's July 18th, 2019. I'm standing just south of the future greenhouse, the area that's under construction. And today I'm just going to give you an update on what we've done so far. So I've been able to get the trusses up. Thea was able to help me with one of the trusses, turning another truss around when I started to load it up incorrectly, and was able to help me get the center partition up as well. All of that really helped out an awful lot. But through much struggles and strains, the more challenging parts of getting this constructed was cleaning up all the aluminum. The aluminum was just caked with old window pane putty, silicone, other types of adhesives as well. Lots of oxidized aluminum as well. This is 50 years old, this Lord and Burnham greenhouse, aluminum and glass greenhouse. And so we had to do a lot of work just trying to clean up the aluminum, get some of the oxidized metal off, and get all those putty and silicone materials off. I did store quite a few materials. Just off to the side is the small landscape trailer that I have, and I stored a lot of the aluminum on there. The awnings are still stored inside of here. The vertical posts that go around the perimeter were all stored inside of this area. The rafters are all stored inside of the barn because they're so long. And the trusses were stored up against the gazebo. So I had to sort through, and I have buckets of bolts and connectors and all in a cabinet as well. So the goal here was to first see if I could get all the aluminum to a renewed state, cleaning it up. That meant using angle grinders with wire brushes on them, sand discs on them. So the sand disc, it didn't require as much power. So I used an 18-volt DeWalt angle grinder, which is still working great. I've had it since they first came out. And I've got a FlexVolt 20-volt DeWalt angle grinder as well that really required the torque in order to get this material down, get all that harsh material off of the aluminum with wire wheels on it. So that worked pretty well. But relatively speaking, the amount of aluminum that I had to clear with what I've gotten up so far is small compared to what I potentially will have to get up. All the rafters that go in between each one of these trusses. So there's some I-beams that connect there's 4 I-beams that connect each one of these trusses. These are 32-foot span trusses, and they're 6-foot tall I-beams on the side as vertical posts, and the height of the peak is about 16 feet. So it's been a challenge. First, we had to figure out how to get these up there safely as a one-man operation. Thea was able to help me get the first truss I was able to get up by myself because it was right next to the building. But once we got out there freestanding, trying to keep it from falling over and all, I had to figure out how to do that. And so I used a few different tools to help me do that. One, in order to move the trusses around on the property safely, I use Bumblebee, the mini-excavator. Now, because it's a mini-excavator, it doesn't reach up to 16 feet high with the bucket being in the proper orientation. In other words, with the excavation bucket with one with 4 teeth on it, when I'm excavating a hole or a pond or digging out a stump, the bucket goes like this and it pulls towards me. So what I ended up doing was reversing the bucket so that the teeth faced away from me. So that gave me another couple feet of height that I was able to get, and that way I was able to use the reverse bucket technique on the mini excavator in order to put a couple of straps on each one of these trusses. Once they were all set, wire brushed down, cleaned up and all, pressure washed, and then I'd lift them up and I bring them over to over here on the side is a pallet lift. And a pallet lift, a panel lift. So like a drywall lift. So what it is just an H pattern on the top, and it's got a hand crank that you can load a piece of sheetrock on and raise it up to the ceiling, hold against the ceiling while you put the fasteners in. So I got the extension kit for my panel lift, hooked it up onto the panel lift, And when I brought the mini-excavator over with the truss attached with 2 straps, I was able to set that down on top of the panel lift at a lower position, probably around 12 feet high, back off the mini-excavator, remove the straps, and then use the panel lift to go ahead and raise up the truss. Then I just had to adjust it and get it to the location where I could bring it up to each of the side posts that hold it up vertically. And I kept the panel lift underneath the peak of the truss while the 2 sides were attached, and then I attach each one of the I-beams that connect from truss to truss to truss to the end walls as well. So that's how I was able to get these things set, and fortunately we labeled all the trusses and all of the vertical posts. Many of the materials we had the foresight to label them, so it was easy enough to put them in their exact location that they came from. But the next phase will be cleaning up a lot of the rest of the aluminum and deciding how much of that material I'm going to be using depending on what sort of glazing compounds I'm using. So why is that a big challenge? So when you go to conservatories and you see some of these Lord and Burnham fabulous glass and aluminum greenhouses that are all over the world, and they're just amazing greenhouse structures, and they've been building them for, I don't know, well over 100 years, I believe. One of the things about the aluminum and glass, single pane glass, is it really has a very low R value, and therefore you lose a lot of heat. And the other drawback to using the glass panels is that it doesn't diffuse the light at all. So there's the potential when we have real sunny days. Now we're really overcast area. We live in Oswego, New York, near Lake Ontario. We get cloud cover coming down from the Arctic winds coming across the Great Lakes, Lake Ontario, Lake Erie. Those cold winter winds go across the lake, which is a large thermal mass unit. These large bodies of water, they retain heat. Some of that, the moisture from those large thermal mass units goes up and it forms clouds. And those clouds block the sunlight all winter long. So we have decreased solar gain during the winter months, so we have decreased heating potential that could come from the sun's energy as a result of our geographic location. And plants are pretty sensitive to getting burnt if they're used to being in the shade all winter long and all spring, and then all of a sudden you have 2 weeks of no cloud cover come late spring or early summer, then all the leaves get burnt. So having a glazing that has a diffusive ability to diffuse the rays of the sun, so there's less of a chance of the leaves getting burnt is important. The other thing to think about is gaining R value, having more insulation in whatever the glazing is. Now, the building that we're up against is a super insulated building. The thermal mass is insulated below the thermal mass. It's insulated on the outside of the walls. These are insulated concrete forms, so they really have a good bit of insulation there. But the heat is going to go up and out. So the roof glazing is really important. And certainly most passive solar greenhouses that we see nowadays, they aren't built like this, where they're 3 sides, so you get the east sun, east, south, and west suns coming in. And it's great to have that ability if you're not in such a cold, cloudy environment. But since we're in such a cold, cloudy environment, it'd be best if we had an elongated structure that just had a long south-facing wall. And many of them are built dug into the ground so that they gain more thermal. They don't lose as much thermal energy. Their north walls and part of the north roof is insulated as well. All of those things are really good design features. But we had to deal with we had already put on our property. And there is a location where I could build a greenhouse like this, but because of our snow load and it being so far out and back where the large hugelkultur systems are, well, we'd never get to the greenhouse. And it's really important to have good access to the greenhouse. So it needs to be close to, it's like the kitchen garden, if you will. it needs to be close to easy access during the winter months. And when you're getting several feet of snow, it's darn near impossible. You've seen in some of my videos, I have to snow blow out to where the wood is stored at the sugar shack and where the solar panels are. That's a lot of work to go ahead and clean out the snow just so I can get back to those locations. And the only other safe location where I wouldn't run into water issues would be much further south than that. So we decided to go with this greenhouse structure since we were able to get it at a bargain for the price that we got it at. And so one of the things I'll probably end up doing is in the next week or two, I'll probably be deciding on the glazing material. So glass on the roof is out. I'm not going to be using glass on the roof. I may use glass on the vents, but I'm thinking, well, polycarbonate's pretty darn expensive, and let's say the three-walled polycarbonate at 16 millimeters actually has a pretty decent R value, has great diffusion ability, but it's pretty darn expensive, especially with the shipping costs. So that's what I was originally planning on using. But I think right now I'm looking at Solex, S-O-L-E-X-X, that's not a polycarbonate, that's a polyethylene, and it's constructed similar to a two-walled polycarbonate. It's flexible, it does expand in the heat, that can be an issue, and it's more malleable, it's more easily bendable. And it's UV treated throughout the whole layer, where the polycarbonate is, the outside is treated, as long as you get it oriented correctly when you're installing it. So that's something to think about. I have to think about where we're going. The other thing that I have are, I purchased on Craigslist, a couple years ago, some double pane smoke glass. So it's argon-filled glass panels that are in good shape. They came out of a high school, and someone was selling them on Craigslist, and I bought a whole bunch of them, thinking about some of the structures that I wanted to get some solar gain. And that would be potentially on the south face here during those harsh months, because one of the things I've thought about having was glass on the walls so that you at least retain some of the visual appeal. So when we're out here in the winter months, I don't want to be being surrounded by just an all-white appearing building like the Solex would look, or the smaller double panel 6 millimeter polycarbonate, which really doesn't look like glass. You can't see through it very well. You can't make things out on the outside of the building very well. So having some glass around the outside perimeters can be quite nice. At least that's my thought process now. There are other ideas I do have for inside the northern area about putting a greenhouse within a greenhouse. And I'll talk more about that in the future, but it certainly won't be this year. I have to see, get some temperature measurements and time with the thermal mass and with the spaces that we're actually growing the plants in before I decide on that. Okay, so I think what'll show up next are some GoPro footage of about midweek or several days ago. After getting a couple of trusses up, I went ahead and took the GoPro Karma drone and flew it around this construction site. I'm going to shoot some after I get done recording this bit here of the GoPro Karma circling around, and I may add some footage just showing some of the process of me using the angle grinders, cleaning up some of the aluminum, using Bumblebee, the mini-excavator, to pick up trusses, put them on the panel lift, and getting those set for installation as well. And I think that just about covers it. So if you have any comments or questions, please leave them below. I always appreciate your feedback and your thoughts and questions. If you thought this video was of value, please give us a thumbs up and share it with your friends. And by all means, folks, have a great day. Bye-bye now. you.